Hello everyone, welcome back to a brand new edition of Ariel Helwani Meets, and this is a very special one, of course. We're here in Cardiff, Wales, Saturday night, Clash at the Castle, massive event, first time in 30 years, a massive stadium show here in the UK for WWE, and one of the biggest matches on the card involves this man, Seth Rollins, Matt Riddle. Tremendous build, can't wait for it. We were supposed to get it a month ago, we're getting it now. Thank you so much for the time, Seth. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, this is great. I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Yeah.
I thought you were ducking me a couple times.
Maybe I was,
but
maybe
we
I
nailed
wasn't.
you down right here. Thank you. I really appreciate this. Wow, we have a lot to talk about. I actually want to start with this past Monday. As you know, I dabble in the world of MMA as well. And I'm sitting there watching Raw, no joke. I don't always get a chance to watch it live. This time I'm watching it live. And I see the shot of you and Riddle split screen doing the back and forth. A good friend of mine, I believe a good friend of yours as well, when Daniel Cormier was once involved in a situation like that, a very infamous moment in the history of MMA with Jon Jones. And it was the first, I actually texted him. I was like, I think they're paying homage to you right now, DC. This is crazy. And then it keeps going, and it felt even more like it. And then everyone started catching on. Could you tell us, was that like a tip of the cap to DC and Jones back in the day?
Yeah, it was a little bit. It was brought to my attention a few weeks prior. I had actually never seen the original DC Jon Jones split screen. So it was brought to my attention, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks previously as a possible idea. And I had never seen it, so immediately Googled it. And I was so struck by it. I mean, if you have no pretense, no notion, like definitely go Google it, YouTube it, check it out. It's wild, and it's like, it's so intense and it's great. And yeah, there was a bit of a nod to those guys.
That's amazing.
It was just such a great. I mean, they have such a legitimate beef with each other. Riddle and I do to an extent as well, and so it just made sense, and I think it worked really well.
Could I ask like how that was presented to you? Like, because I'm a bit surprised you never seen it because it's such a famous moment.
Yeah, it slipped through the cracks. I mean, I'm a big DC fan.
Yeah.
I watch all the UFC pay-per-views, and I was, hyped for all the Jon Jones DC fights. And so I just one of those that, the build-up just slipped on through for whatever reason. And somebody just was like, hey, have you ever seen this? I think it would work really good for you guys. And so I was like, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Not really thinking anything of it. And I was on a live event somewhere and the East Coast, and checked it out, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, that we can definitely use that for our story here.
So as you know, I think it's the best feud in MMA history because it was so real, right? It was so personal, and the best feuds in pro wrestling are the ones that feel real, feel personal, and that's why I think people are enjoying this feud with Matt Riddle. And you just mentioned like you guys don't like each other, and so could I ask, like, where does that stem? What's the the catalyst, the embryonic stages of this feud, so to speak? Where does it come from?
I mean, I've never really, as long as I've known the guy, I've never really liked his attitude. I never really just kind of liked the way he goes about his business. A lot of the ways that he sort of kind of disrespected guys that were like way above his pay grade when he was down in NXT. The Booker T's, the Goldbergs, the Brock Lesnars. I'm just like, dude, pay your dues, work your way up. You're so good. He's so ultra talented in the ring, just like he was in the octagon. But that's never been his issue. His issue is his head. Just getting himself mentally where he needs to be able to consistently perform. And he's trying to talk his way to the top, which I respect in some ways. But at the same time, like, you're gonna get there. Just work your way up the right way. And so I never really liked that. And it really kind of kicked off. There was an incident with his now ex-wife where he was kind of taking her side as she was, for better or worse, body shaming. I mean, that's the only way I can put it. My current wife at the time was my girlfriend, and some of the other girls in the locker room, completely unprovoked. And I understand as a husband you got to take your wife's side, but you also can zip your trap sometimes. And so I felt like him taking her side, I just was like, you gotta shut up. So essentially, the cat opens his mouth when he shouldn't and says things that he shouldn't when he shouldn't, and it gets him in some hot water. And I don't like the way he conducts himself.
And that incident with his ex-wife speaking up, felt very real. That wasn't a part of a storyline or anything like that.
No, I don't even know what prompted her
Right.
to do that, and I don't know in what context or what world she thought her opinion was necessary. And I don't want to spend too much time on her at all, but the main crux of it was, yo, dude, you work with us. We are supposed to be working together, and you're creating this divide where there doesn't need to be one. And so, yeah, just him kind of speaking up and saying, I've got her back no matter what she says because she's my ride or die. I get it, but there are better ways to handle that situation.
Did you say this to him? Did you approach him about it?
I just never talked to him.
Really?
Yeah, I just never said anything to him. Because I believe the comment happened when he was down in NXT. And then once he got called up to the main roster, it was like, don't want to work with him, don't want to deal with him. So it's very easy to ignore people if you want to, if you're not, kind of entangled with them.
Do you have issues working with him now?
I'm a professional, and so I get the job done. And I think anybody that I've ever worked with, you could ask, no matter what has gone on backstage, when the red light's on and we're out there in front of the crowd, it's a different person. Backstage is a different situation as well. And so there's Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle backstage. Like, we're never going out, hanging out, going to bars, partying, and doing anything like that. Probably not even sharing a slice of pizza. And there's Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle in the ring. And like I said, I'm a professional, so I handle things accordingly on both sides of the camera.
One more thing about the personal side of things, like you brought up his marital status in that back and forth. That's a different kind of level, right? Is that crossing the line?
I mean, I don't think so. I think if you're, and this is something that I learned from working with John Cena, and who's someone who he always taught me to have a very thick skin when it came to whatever was said on camera, because it's fair game. No matter what, if it's on camera, it's fair game. It stays out there and lives in that world. Backstage, that's a different world. Those are two different things. And so John always instilled in me, and I always feel the same way. I'm like, look, you can bring up anything you want about my personal life, and I've got plenty of skeletons in my closet that you could talk about if you want, or things that I'm insecure about, and you got to be prepared to handle that on the back end. So when you're out there in front of the camera, I say anything goes.
Wow, so you don't have any line whatsoever?
I don't think so.
There's nothing that would make you feel like, man, that was too much?
I mean, aside from some sort of threatening remark to my baby girl,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So there's your line.
Yeah, I mean, that might be...
And I would respect that.
Yeah, I would say, like I said, some sort of threatening remark to an infant child might push my buttons the wrong way. But yeah, I think other than that, I'm mostly on John's side. I really think you got to be able to have a thick skin in this business, especially on camera.
I know you've worked with people. I mean, you're freaking MVP of the roster, and you've worked with so many, and it feels like they really count on you in moments to deliver. But there are times when you're working with people you like and working with people you don't like. And I'm wondering how challenging that is. You talk about, like, when the light comes on, you're a pro, you get it done. But it does probably make things a little more difficult, right?
I mean, I think every experience is different. Some relationships are like mine and Riddle, where we don't like each other backstage, but there's an obvious chemistry in the ring. And so, I think that you can do both. And there's other instances where, guys maybe aren't as professional in the ring, and they want to go into business for themselves, or when putting the match together, coming up with stuff like that, they're a little more selfish and stuff like that. And so, over the years, I've been doing this now for nearly 20 years, I've learned my lessons. I've taken my licks by not paying attention to that stuff in certain situations. And so you learn how to manage those things, because the show must go on one way or another. And so I'm of the opinion that you got to go out and give the people the best show you possibly can. Sometimes that's not as good as you want it to be based on what those interactions are like backstage. But, like I said, when the red light's on, I go out there and give it 110% to the best of my ability every single time.
Why didn't you have a match at SummerSlam?
It was actually... it was one of those situations where we had a regime change in the midst of the build to SummerSlam. I believe a week out, we had, the biggest change in the history of our industry. And so when Triple H took over the creative process, he was looking at the hand that was dealt with him. They ended up having to add what I believe is the Mysterio's match based on a sponsorship agreement. I believe Ray and Dom have some sort of deal with an alcohol company, a beer company, and there was some money involved, and so they had to add the match on. And to do that, you've either got to take out a whole match or you've got to cut times from all the other match to keep the show at a reasonable time. I think the run time ended up being almost 4 hours anyway. Anything beyond that is a little ridiculous in my opinion. So, you were looking at the card and you looked at the title matches, which we weren't. You looked at the, celebrity type matches that are, you're only going to get one chance to do those, which we weren't. And so we kind of fell into that spot where it was, okay, we could use some more weeks to build this story as it was. But yeah, they made the choice to axe our match and make sure all the other matches were maximized with time and story and all that, and totally understood that and respect it. I was a little upset that we had advertised the match and then not given that to them. And at the level I had been performing for really the last year, I felt it was a bit of a slap in the face to me as a performer that I wasn't able to be on what is essentially the second biggest show of the year for us.
Not to mention you're Mr. SummerSlam.
I am Mr. SummerSlam. You look back at the track record, all
right.
Hits, no misses.
So, safe to say you felt a little disrespected?
Yeah, of course. I think anybody in my position with who takes pride in what they do, I think there's got to be a little disrespect felt there, Did I go about it the right way? Maybe, maybe not. But
what did you do?
Well, the tweet.
The tweet. Was it just the tweet or was it something else?
No, just the tweet.
No conversation backstage?
So, no. I got the word that they were killing the match, and I didn't really, I didn't take too kindly to it. I kind of had a couple days to sit on it before they actually announced that they were going to move it. So I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do, and then I was like, man, I feel bad for people who were excited to see the match, who had paid money maybe to come see that match specifically that we had been building towards for a few weeks and had advertised now for, I think, a week or two. And so I felt the need to kind of control my own narrative, so to speak, in that regard. I didn't really feel like letting other people kind of shift the way the story was going was in my best interest. And so I kind of took things into my own hands.
So you put something out there, to the extent I'm paraphrasing, like, thank you for, singing along. Maybe someday they'll hear you, right?
Yep.
Do you remember the exact words? Something to that effect, right?
Something along those lines. Yeah, I don't exactly know, but it was something inferring like maybe the people in power will
right.
listen if you sing loud enough.
Shortly thereafter, Triple H retweets it and says, "I hear you."
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see that, what do you think?
I understood the what I felt was the purpose of the tweet, the response to mine. I don't know, maybe it was a bit of a smirk, like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
He's listening, you know what I mean? So, and I think, it's very interesting coming from his perspective because he has been in my shoes many, many times, right? I mean, he's most certainly been in situations that he didn't want to be in, or was asked to do something he didn't want to do creatively, or was maybe even taken off of a show when he was advertised, when he was perfectly healthy, or just maybe not booked, And so I think that he probably understood where I was coming from. Didn't like that I was throwing pie in his face in his first week, most likely, and rightfully so. But we talked about it and hashed things out, and so I respected his position and understood where he was coming from, and I think he understood where I was coming from. So we sort of agreed to disagree and just move along when it came to that situation.
So we'll end on this. Saturday, we have a massive show, and it's Drew McIntyre, in front of his people, right, going up against Roman Reigns, 2-year champ, and a lot of big names. But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a part of you that even though you're not in the main event, perhaps you relish being in the people's main event and stealing the show, so to speak, and perhaps overshadowing the main event and people saying, like, that's the guy. Do you take pride in that?
Of course.
Yeah? Okay.
Of course, man. I mean, I think I'm the best wrestler on the planet. I think I have been for a long time, but I'm really in my groove right now. Like, just really in my groove. And so anytime they give me a chip on my shoulder, I've already got one. You know, I walk around with one all the time. But anytime they add a little bit to that, you know, I think that's when I'm at my absolute best. Like when I feel like my back's against the wall kind of thing, or I'm not the focal point where I feel like I should be. I just feel like I deliver my best content in those moments. And so we're definitely kind of in that zone right now. You know, there's going to be 70,000 people, biggest pay-per-view we've had over here in 30 years. And I'm looking to have by far the best match on the show. I mean, I want to blow everything else out of the water. And that's always my mindset going into these big shows. It was at WrestleMania, it was at Royal Rumble, it is, you know, here in Cardiff. It was going into SummerSlam as well. But now, like I said, once you keep adding stuff to my back, man, I'll carry the weight. I don't care. I can do it. I've been doing it for a long time.
I'm fascinated by this chip on your shoulder, but we're going to save that for part 2 of our conversation. How about that tease? WWE Clash at the Castle goes down Saturday right here on BT Sport. People's main event, perhaps. It's this man, Seth Rollins against Matt Riddle. Don't miss it. Hope you enjoyed it. Part 2 coming next week.